Welcome. My name is Matthew DeSantis, and I'm joined today by,
Joe DePinto of the Binge Bros podcast.
and we are Amalfi at the Masters. And don't adjust your phone or computer, however you're watching this. Some of you may be familiar with me or Joey from our various content, but we don't actually produce much content together. In fact, this is a first smash up of the Amalfi Media empire and content. But as Joey mentioned, he is the co host of the Amalfi Media show Binge Bros, and I am the host of the weekly political podcast From the Swamp to the Swamp. Joey, why don't you tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about Binge Bros in case they're interested in checking it out?
Sure. So Binge Bros is a movie/TV podcast. We cover everything from Marvel Cinematic Universes to older movies to new and upcoming films and short TV shows as well. One of our more recent reviews was we are currently covering the new Captain or Falcon the Winter Soldier, which is premiering on Disney Plus. And then some of our past reviews have included Shutter Island, Goodfellas. So there's a little bit something for everyone. No matter what kind of movie fan you are, you'll find a place in Binge Bros.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge movie buff, and so I always enjoy listening to your reviews and your comparisons between two films sometimes. So it's always great content. And as I mentioned, I'm the weekly host of the political film or political podcast From the Swamp to the Swamp. And it's a independent-minded political podcast. We have on weekly guests as well, from activists to politicians to journalists to policymakers from all across the ideological spectrum. And I also break down the biggest stories of the week and try to do so in, I think, a pretty nonpartisan way, and a way that helps people understand what's really happening in Washington, D.C. and around the world. So if you're interested in politics, want to learn a little bit more, feel free to tune into the Swamp to the Swamp. But that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about golf. And it is the unofficial start of the golf season. And that is, of course, the Masters, the first of the many golf majors, the 4 on the calendar year. We're finally back to a normal calendar. Last year, the Masters was delayed all the way until November because of the pandemic, but it is back in its regular slot as the first of the golf majors on April 8th to the 11th. But what qualifies me and Joey to talk about the Masters? Well, let's talk a little bit about our background. So, Joey, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about how, maybe you got introduced to the game of golf and your background in golf?
Sure. So I've played golf ever since I can remember. Young age, and maybe not taking it so seriously, but then really started developing a passion for it come middle school, and then into high school, I played it competitively, and I have played competitively in some nature ever since. Whether it be golf on the course, just the game of golf as a whole, course design, or golf tournaments like we see on TV, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the game. I love how the game is growing and how younger talent is really starting to show in the game as well. It's one of my passions and probably one of my favorite sports as a whole.
Absolutely. And I had, similar background to you in the regard that I also played competitively in high school. I did not play much, though, growing up. And I remember my father refused to sign a permission slip for me to play any sport at all. And he thought I was going to break a bone or break a leg or, do something stupid. I probably would have, to his point. But eventually in 10th grade, he agreed to let me play golf. The problem was I had never actually played golf before in my life. But I signed up to play on the varsity golf team about 3 months before the season started. And so that summer, God bless my dad, he took me out a bunch of times, and we would, play and learn to really love the game. I was an okay high school golfer, was not good enough to play in college. Obviously, you and I both went to Furman University, which has a nationally ranked and very nationally prestigious golf program for both the men and particularly for the women, who are really outstanding at golf in that program. But so it's, I've loved golf, though, followed it ever since. I've been to 3 Masters tournaments. I've been to the U.S. Open. I've been to the PGA. I've not been to the British Open yet, but I love going to golf tournaments, whether they're majors or just the local golf tournament when the PGA comes through town. So always enjoy talking about it and excited for the Masters. And so with that being said, I wanted to just start, obviously, as I mentioned, the Masters is the first of the 4 majors this year. But Joey, what to you makes the Masters so special? Because it is one of those tournaments you just hear people talk about it, whether they're professional golfers, whether they're fans, And there's just something special about it. There's a twinkle in people's eye when they talk about it. And so, what makes it special for you?
Yeah, I don't know. Whenever I hear that music, the signature Masters music, when it starts on commercials, it just makes me smile. It makes you giddy as a golf fan. Whether it be just how beautiful the course is, the vibrant green fairways, to the pine straw that layer every tree base. It's such an immaculately kept course, which is why I think it is so sought after by a lot of pros to go play in that tournament. Also, the history. When you wear that green jacket after you win, you are a winner and a Masters champion, and you get your own spot in the clubhouse. There's something to said about that. And I think, people like Jack, like Tiger, like Phil, that have, multiple different green jackets under their belt, they keep coming back year and year because of what the fans bring. Because if you think about it, this is one of the most sought after tournaments to go to in all of golf, whether it be US Open, which obviously moves from different places, so different people have a chance. But there's only one Augusta, Georgia that has Augusta National. So you can only go one place. There's so many things that make this tournament great, and it's got to be one of my favorite tournaments of the year. I don't know about you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's always my favorite. As I said, I've been fortunate enough to be there 3 times for 3 Sundays, in fact, and that was just a really special experience. And you're right; it's immaculate. It's probably the most beautiful sports setting in the world. And I've been to Pebble Beach. I haven't been over to some of those British links. I think those would be, St. Andrews and places like that, which I think would be really special. But just nothing is like Augusta, Georgia. And you turn off a Washington Road in Augusta and you start going back Magnolia Lane, and you see the clubhouse and you see the course, and it's just immaculate. And it's this huge undulating course too, and it's really set up for viewers as well. It's a great course for the spectator. And it's just, it's beautifully set up. And the great part about it is the Masters, they don't take a lot of corporate money and they don't take a lot of sponsorship. And so when
Right.
you get there, the part that I always love about it is everything's so cheap. Now, and you
Right.
go to the Masters gift shop, it's not cheap there. You want to buy, a polo shirt like the one I have, actually I'm sporting today, and little things like that. They get a little pricey. But when you go to the concessions, the pimento cheese sandwiches are like $2. Coke is $1.50, a beer is $2.50. Everything's like really affordable and cheap in a day that, you go to a football game or something like that, a beer is going to cost you $12 and a hot
Yeah,
dog's
12,
$10.
$11, right?
Yeah. And so it's just, I love going to the Masters for that reason. I tell people, you take $20, you got food and drink for the whole day. So, and you're right, that consistent site is something to be said for that, because every year the best players in the world go there, and it's amazing to see how this course holds up so well. Despite the fact that so many players, as you said, keep coming back, have so much familiarity with it. And yet some years you can see them really get stumped by the course. Some of those, winning scores can be quite low. So obviously weather has some impact on that, but really it is just such a special course. And obviously also, I think that was probably 98, a little bit before your time in terms of watching, but after Tiger Woods won, and they kind of tiger-proofed the course and lengthened it a little bit. And I think once they did that, it really has been a course that's held up great over that time period of time. So I was curious, what was your kind of first Masters memory, in terms of watching it on TV or becoming conscious of the tournament?
Yeah, so the first one I can remember was Phil's second win, and I had been told that was Phil's second win, so it was kind of up to me to kind of decipher that and figure out, oh, okay, this is his second green jacket. But that was the first time I can ever really remember watching the tournament. Was I watching too seriously? No, because when you're younger, you kind of just see, you watch the Sunday and it's, that's who the winner is, of the Masters tournament. And then as time goes on, you see people get more green jackets like Tiger and, Bubba Watson, Adam Scott, all those people become more appreciative of the game. I think when Adam Scott won his Masters tournament, when he beat Angel Cabrera in the playoff, that's the one that I remember actually sitting down, like really understanding what was going on. But my first memory was Phil's win, and one of Phil's best wins in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. No, all those Phil victories are so special. And yeah, I like you. My first Masters memory was Freddie Couples winning in like 1992, sure. I want to say. Maybe it was 93. I think it was 92 though. And I didn't, again, that was before I really started playing golf. at all, but I was aware of golf and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it. I knew about Greg Norman and all of his collapses a
Sure.
little bit. And so like I knew a
Mhm.
little bit about things, but like you, it was like I'll watch on Sunday. Like I wasn't following from Thursday. Um, but I just remember watching with my dad, and I remember and it's a little bit like Phil in that like Freddie Couples was this great player who never seemed to win the master or the majors. And
Mhm.
like I remember people thinking it was a really big deal that Freddie Couples finally won the Masters. And it was like,
Right.
here's this guy who should have probably won so much more than he did. But never, just for one reason or another, never did. And so I remember that being like a really big deal. And I also remember like the '90s golf fashion was bad. I remember that
Yeah.
very.
It wasn't too great. That's for sure.
No, no. What we thought was fashionable back then, like, thank God there are not many pictures of me playing golf
It's
back
a
in the
lot
90s.
different. It's a lot different now. But also, talking about Freddie Couples, he's one of those guys that shows up every year because I think something people forget about with the Masters tournament is every time, if you win, every time there is a Masters, you are invited to come back and play. I love that. Past champions in the field. You're watching, even when Arnold Palmer was like, when Jack Nicklaus was playing their last rounds, right? Ever. It was probably at Augusta. And I think that's just phenomenal. The fact that they bring back these past champions. And not for nothing, Fred Couples still can tow it with the best of them out there.
Absolutely. No, it's so funny you mentioned that. You're absolutely right. So, Freddie always does really well. He runs out of juice a little bit on the weekend, but like he
Think
always will
so.
put up like a 68 or something like that the first
Sure.
day. Because
Mhm.
those guys just know the course so well and they know how to cut the corners and they've lost their distance over time, but they know the tricks of and especially like I said, a course like Augusta has so many angles to it that it's like they don't need to bomb it as far as Bryson DeChambeau. They know
Sure.
they can just run it down these certain sloping fairways and still get to 350 yards that way. Um,
Yeah.
and Bernhard Longer, that's another guy who always seems to play really well.
Sure.
But you're right. Like older players tend to, Greg Norman's actually also played well late into his 50s there. And so, yeah, older players tend to always play well at Augusta National. And I think that's great. You're right. They just keep coming back. And, guys who would normally be relegated to the senior tour and not be back, are kind of playing. And obviously the history of, seeing Jack and Arnie playing their
Sure.
last rounds is just amazing and very special. And so, speaking of special, do you have a particular kind of favorite or most memorable Masters moment?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come too long ago. In 2019, when Tiger had his comeback win, first of all, I'll start by saying this. When I was younger, I was the biggest Tiger Woods fan. And, obviously, when I was younger, I don't understand, the whole celebrity aspect of it and what gets involved there. And, he's done his wrong. But to see him come back, and I think the biggest thing for me was the injury, right? He had an injury which we thought he was done forever. It was heartbreaking to a lot of his fans, and people just in the golf community. And then he went and won the tour championship, and we were like, okay, we're seeing another win here. Tiger's he's still got it, and it was just so divine when he walked on that course and just played his heart out. And I was pretty nervous because at that point, Francesco Molinari, I don't know if you remember,
Oh,
was
yeah.
having a great round. Brooks Koepka was having a great round. Tony Finau was playing really well. And Tiger was just consistently there. And I feel like at Augusta's, the cool thing about it is you just have to be consistently there. There are holes that can get you in trouble. Par three azalea, when you hit off that par three, and if you hit the hill any, bit close to the edge, it's in the water.
Yep.
You're done.
No, that hole, I mean, that sank Jordan Spieth. I mean, you could argue that
Oh, yes.
derailed his career really to this point.
Could have,
I mean,
for sure.
it's been what 3-4 years since that happened, where he took a 7 on that hole, I think, and it's just, I mean, that was a guy who was a shooting star, and then all of a sudden he got to that hole and hasn't won
Blew
much
up.
of anything since.
Yeah.
So, no, you're right, and that comeback win in 2019 was so memorable, and having been there before, one of my, it's funny, probably the most memorable win. I'll get to that in a second, but one of my favorite moments was one year I was there. I got there really early on a Sunday. And so when you get to a golf tournament early, it's usually the guys who have not had a particularly good week. They're playing, they have those early tee
Right.
times. They're 20 strokes behind the leaders in some cases. And so my friend Scott Merriam and I were following Luke Donald who was at the time like one of the top 2 or 3 players in the world. Like he just had an off
Yeah.
week, but he was a really good player. So we were following him, and he hit his drive into a pine straw a little off the fairway. He was probably about 180 yards from the green. And because it was so early, Scott and I were like right by his ball, and like almost nobody else was there. And so there's Luke Donald just like walking up to the two of us, just jerks just sitting there. And and he kind of talks to his caddy for a second, picks out like, I don't even know what club, picks out a club. There's pine straw. He's hitting off of 180 yards. He's hitting, there's the branches hanging down. And there are some other people already out in the course. And one of the things you'll hear people talk about is that Masters roar, that roar of the crowd. And and it reverberates through the course, and it really does. And you hear it from all over. And I'll never forget, he gets behind the ball, addresses it. In the middle of his backswing, you hear this cheer coming from 3, 4, 5 holes away. And he just stops mid backswing, turns, looks dead at me and Scooter, and goes, "What do you think, birdie or an eagle?" And I was like, and I think Scott was quicker than I was, and Scott was like, "I think it's a birdie," and he's like, "No," he's like, "That's an eagle cheer right there," and it was there was an eagle cheer. We found out later, but then just to show you how good these guys are, he then sits there, readdresses the ball in about 3 seconds, hits whatever he was hitting off the pine straw, and knocks it 6 feet from the cup, taps in for birdie. I mean, it's out of this world. That would have taken me 8 strokes to get, from there to the hole. So, yeah, it's just a very cool moment. But I think my favorite was, you mentioned Phil's second win. I think my most memorable was Phil's first win. That was just, he was the guy who couldn't get off the schneid. He just was the best player who never won a major. And for him to break through at Augusta, it just meant a lot. I remember my roommate at the time, Lee Bennett, I thought was going to break his arm, break his hand on the sofa. He was pounding the sofa so hard. And yeah, it was just a very cool moment. I mean, seeing Phil win. I'm sure fans, some international fans probably had a similar experience with Sergio, a few years ago.
Sure.
As a guy who won there who hadn't won before. So
yeah, and you love to see that too. You love to see guys who continually are good players, continually win tournaments or place high in tournaments, and then they go win a major for the first time. It's an incredible, and like what you mentioned, Sergio, I think the emotion that comes out of you, because for a special point, it's one thing to win a U.S. Open, right? One thing to win a PGA Championship, but it's one thing for your first to be at Augusta, and I think that feeling is unlike anything at least from a tour perspective, what you could possibly feel. And again, we don't know what that's like because we struggle to get out of pine straw like that. But you can only imagine that must be pretty surreal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned Adam Scott earlier. I think that might have been his first. I think that was his first major too. Yeah.
It was, and talk about winning in style too. You're on a playoff. The rain is coming down. I remember watching on TV. The rain was just coming down at Augusta National, and when that course gets a little wet, the course changes completely. It's a completely different ballgame from when you start a round, say, and then rain comes in the end of the round. But winning in a playoff and just the attitude, it was phenomenal. And Bubba too. Bubba Watson had his first majors win there as well.
Yeah, I was there for Bubba's second. And that was, he's he's just so impressive with that swing and being lefty, and he's so long off the tee. People love him too. And that's the other fun part about being there is you realize, the Masters tournament they have their favorites. I mean, they definitely like certain guys. Phil is beloved down there. I mean, among the gallery. And Bubba was very popular. Ricky Fowler, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit, I think, is somebody else who's really loved by the gallery. And so it's great to see those guys win and break through finally in front of a really adoring crowd. So
absolutely.
But enough of the past. Let's talk about the present, because we got an exciting 2021 Masters coming up.
We do.
This is a little bit different than normal, and it's because last year, 2 years ago, I should say, Augusta started the women's national tournament. That is the week before Augusta National, women's amateur. And so previously, a lot of times guys would take off the week before the Masters, go to Augusta, practice on the course. That's not really a case anymore, because now you have the women's amateur there. I love the women's amateur. I think it's a great addition to the tournament. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And I also, when I went to school, Furman has a great women's golf team. And I was actually able to meet some of the people and luckily be friends with some of the people that actually played in that tournament. Now, from what I understand, the first day, I believe you're trying to qualify to play at Augusta the last day. So it's a satellite course, not on property. And then the last day you're brought to Augusta, and that's kind of where you play. But it's so cool to see holes from different angles, right? So something you're not going to normally see. These longer par threes, perhaps, are a little bit up close or a little bit closer, and different approaches to the game. That's what I love. The difference between men's and women's golf is there's just such different approaches to how you play. And I think that's the more unique side of it, right? We're seeing this for, at least back then, the first time, we'll see for the second time coming up, of really how you play a golf course, differently than what you've seen in the past. And that was super cool.
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think you watch guys like Bryson DeChambeau or, Rory McIlroy just bomb it away. And it's just kind of like almost unrealistic. You're like, well, I don't even know how I would play like this course. And to watch the amateurs, and not just women amateurs, but even, male amateurs too. But to watch amateurs play a course like this, it's more of the science of the game. It's like, how do you cut these angles? How do you hit these approach shots? Oh, you're hitting long irons instead of an 8-iron into a hole. And so very different sort of psychology behind the game. And, I loved watching it 2 years ago when they had their first one. I know I'm already following, some of the buzz around the women amateurs this year. So excited for that. But in terms of the big tournament from the 8th to the 11th, I wanted to kind of just start by seeing kind of what are your thoughts? Like, who do you think is a favorite? I mean, who in your mind are your maybe top 3, top 4 people who you're keeping an eye on and think have a real chance to take home that green jacket this year?
Sure. And this is such an interesting year, right? We're coming off of Augusta being played, in November, right? The first time that we really have seen Augusta being played at a different time than in April. Seeing the course being different, being completely empty at that as well. That's something we aren't used to. And then right away, the crew's back to work, right? Fixing the course, making sure that course is going to be in tip-top shape come April. I'm interested to see if that course looks as good as it did in November. That'll be a big teller here. You always have your name, the big names that are in golf. You got your Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, John Rahm, DeChambeau, all the people that we normally see in the crowd. And they're always going in as favorites. One thing I love about Augusta National is you don't have to be the longest hitter to win this golf tournament. You don't. You don't have to have, the straightest irons, but if you can putt, you can win this golf tournament. And if you have short game, you can win. And that's one of the things we've seen, in the past. One thing I will say is there are a lot of dark horses in this tournament in my eyes, but right now I think the clear distinguished favorites are Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, and I guess even DeChambeau, although DeChambeau's distance can get ahead of him sometimes. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, with how long he is off the tee and in some cases, if he hits a bad shot, it's way gone. And I mean way gone. There's no point of return. So that can a lot of times haunt him, which it did in the November tournament. But would you agree? Do you think it's kind of the same big crowd that most people are saying, hey, this is probably who's going to be the winner here?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. DJ and Justin Thomas and DeChambeau. I was a little surprised. I looked at the odds. I was surprised Rory was as high as he was because it looks like his swing has just fallen apart the last
it's not
couple
there.
of weeks. Or last couple of months, actually. And he even admitted, I want to say, after the Players' Championship, that he was trying to imitate DeChambeau, basically, and kind of gain more length off the tee. And I was like, my man, you were already like one of the longest drivers
you're a major
on the tour.
Champion.
Like, why are you trying to imitate DeChambeau? Like, just play your game, man. So
exactly.
So I'm interested in talking to you about that next cut because you're right. I think there are those kind of clear guys, and talking about them. I mean, a lot of people are going to talk about Justin Johnson and Justin Thomas and John Rahm. Sure. You're right. I mean, and rightfully so. Those guys are great golfers and absolutely all have a great chance. Dustin Johnson's the defending champion of coming back and defending his green jacket. And certainly those other guys have a shot too. I'm interested in some of those second-tiered guys that might pop up, might kind of surprise people. Not total dark horses, but maybe not household names all the time. And so I didn't know. You had a couple, I think, that were pretty interesting. So why don't you share your list a little bit?
Definitely. So, I mean, some of the names I have on my list, and you'll see me looking up just because I'm looking at the names that I have here. But it's interesting to see how young the crowd is.
Yeah.
I'm thinking have a pretty good chance as a dark horse. Names come to mind like Abraham Answer, and Abraham Answer. I don't know if people know about him too much. He's an up and coming player from Mexico, but he's very consistent with his game. And it's it was very cool to watch him in the President's Cup because he's a very good iron player and he's got good short game. He's not the longest off the tee. Again, we're kind of seeing this theme where some of these guys may not be as long off the tee, but boy, can they hit an iron. And if you can get close on the greens at Augusta National, whether it be from short game or from the mid game, I suppose, you can win this golf tournament. So keep an eye on him. Another guy that plays really well there notoriously is Cameron Smith. And he actually was runner-up to DJ last year, if you remember. He had a really good tournament as well. Someone to keep an eye on, a guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing is Scotty Scheffler. Now, Scotty Scheffler actually just came in second to Billy Horschel at the Dell Match Play in Austin, Texas. Now, Scheffler hadn't had a great start the year, but Scheffler really competed in the previous PGA Championship out in San Francisco. He really was he could cut the golf ball really well. He was very impressive with his irons. And at Augusta National, if you're a righty and you can play a cut on most holes, you can play this golf course. So I definitely look for him to make a splash. Other than that, we have, Morikawa, who won the PGA Championship last year. And then Xander Schauffele is always a dark horse favorite in the crowd. I mean, there are a ton of names, but do you have any other ones that I might have missed there?
Yeah, it's interesting. You absolutely nailed a lot of that young guns kind of up and coming group. And you're right. Answer is he's a really good dark horse to think about. So the guy I love, and everybody doesn't get it. Nobody agrees with me. I think I might be the only person who likes this guy, but Patrick Reed. I love Patrick Reed. Now, people don't like Patrick Reed because he sometimes people accuse him of cheating and maybe pushing the rules a little too far, kind of being a little ornery. I personally think golf's more interesting when there's a little bit of a villain. I like Patrick Reed in that role. I will always remember the finger wag he gave to Rory during the Ryder Cup when Rory kind of sank a 25-foot putt. He thought to win a hole and kind of screamed and kind of gestured towards
United States
Reed.
Crowd
And Patrick Reed just coolly got up and just nailed a 20-foot putt and just very silently went, no, 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 my friend.
They started calling him Captain America after that, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
Absolutely, because he's clutch, and I like guys who are clutch. And and Reed is, he played his collegiate golf in Augusta. He's won the tournament before, so he knows how to play that course. I just really like Patrick Reed. I think, I don't know, I like guys with a little grit to them and a little, a different stroke. You mentioned his name before, Tony Finau. He's a guy I think everybody's really rooting for to break through. Just always puts together, it feels like 3.5 good rounds, and then just has, one or two holes
where he close it out.
Yeah, can't pull it out. And it's just, you're just rooting for the guy. And so I'm hoping he does well. The other guy, two other names really quick. One, Justin Rose, older player, but always a smart player, I think, around the course, and just, again, knows how to navigate a course really well. You spoke about iron play, great iron player. And so, he's a guy I wouldn't be surprised if is up on the high on the leaderboard. The other guy that a little bit like Finau, Tommy Fleetwood. I like Tommy Fleetwood a lot. He's a guy who can go really low on good courses, and he's very streaky, but he's a guy that if he's anywhere near the lead on a Sunday afternoon, I'd love to see him go through Amen Corner and potentially go 3-4 under, and just really start to lap the field, because he has that type of game where he can just go low in a way other guys can't. And so,
absolutely.
He's an interesting guy. And then I have a good friend who kind of gave me some inside information and said, anybody who's interested in kind of the amateurs, because there's a lot of amateurs that play at Augusta National. Tyler Strafacci, I want to make sure I get that name right. Tyler Strafacci. He said he thinks he is the inside favorite to be the low amateur who will be recognized in Butler Cabin. So we'll see about that.
Good to know. Good to know. And I think, one thing I think we miss, Matthew, one name that just has to be put out there. no one is playing better golf right now, arguably, than Jordan Spieth.
Yeah.
I will say it. He's in every tournament. He's in the top, 20, give or take, of every event. It'll be interesting to see how he does at the Valero, Texas, which is this week.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how he plays there. But if he comes back and wins this golf tournament at Augusta National, I think you can safely say Jordan Spieth is back, and he will, I think, put himself into the conversation of one of the better golfers of our generation. Absolutely. Not maybe the best, but definitely one of the better ones.
That's a great point. And you talk about a redemption arc. We talked about,
Sure.
He kind of fell apart at Augusta. And he was steamrolling his way to a Tiger-like career early on. And, people like a comeback story. People love a redemption story. And that would certainly be that. And so, yeah, absolutely and he's a guy who, again, I think people took a while to warm up to, but in some way his struggles have made him more endearing. People have really gotten behind him, want to see him succeed. He seems like a really good guy off the course as well. And you always root for that.
Sure.
Another guy who is a great guy off the course by all accounts and who is an absolute fan favorite, but who we've not really mentioned and who may not even be here next week is Ricky Fowler. And what are your thoughts on that?
So Ricky's had a tough year. And there's no doubt about that. He has not played well. He has not placed high. He's missed a lot of cuts. And unfortunately, the Masters isn't forgiving. We're not going to say, oh, you're a crowd favorite, you're in the golf tournament. It's not how it works. Unfortunately, if you are not in a certain threshold, I believe, is it top 75? I'm not certain. I want to say it's top 75. But if you are not in that top margin of players in the United States, and then I obviously add the amateurs in, but if you are not in that threshold, you are not at this golf tournament. And Ricky Fowler is in danger of not making it there. Now, if he wins the Valero Texas Open, which is this week, which he is in the field for, if he wins that tournament, he's automatically in and he's automatically going. And talk about a guy who has a track record of playing this course well. Mm-hmm. When Patrick Reed won his major, Ricky Fowler birdied 18 to shoot 13 under par and come in the clubhouse. If Patrick Reed had made bogey or anything else on that hole on 18, there would have been a playoff. And I'm convinced with how hot Ricky was coming into the end of the round, he could have won. So it's going to be a shame to perhaps not see him there, but that's golf, right? As a fan, you have to accept that. We see some of these great players. You mentioned Luke Donald earlier. Fantastic player throughout early parts of his career. Where is he now?
Yeah.
We don't see him a lot.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I will say, Joey, I don't know how many kind of PGA tournaments you've been to, Masters, or majors or non. I will say, outside of people wearing Tiger red, there are people dress like Ricky Fowler who go to golf tournaments. I don't think if people who are watching or listening to this and who may not go to golf tournaments don't realize how big Ricky is in the game of golf. I mean,
Sure.
Little kids are dressed in all orange because that's Ricky's color. He went to Oklahoma State to play golf. That's their color, is orange and black. He always wears bright orange on Sundays. And you see little kids to grown men to women wearing all orange, supporting Ricky. And he is a guy they love to support. Even if he's having an off weekend, the galleries around him are huge. And it would be sad. It would be very unfortunate if he can't play at the Masters, because you're right. He's been playing well at so many majors too. It's not as if he gets to majors and falls apart. He plays well at them. He just hasn't won one yet. But always hoping he breaks through. So,
and what an ambassador to the game too. You talk about the younger generation, wearing his outfits and stuff like that. Ricky was a different, I guess, a horse of a different color, you can call it, when he came into the game, because he came in and really took fashion to a new level that we hadn't really seen in golf, wearing all orange on Sundays. We were like, whoa, who is this guy? And then all of a sudden you're showing up to golf courses and younger people who are at like these golf camps or whatever, or maybe even just playing around, are dressed just like him, whether it's all orange, all green, all blue, whatever it may be. And I think if Ricky makes the field, it'll be good for golf. But at the same time, I think if he doesn't, it puts a realistic expectation. If you're not able to play well, you're not gonna, there's no pity cards in golf.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, well, we covered a lot of names, so it's kind of put up or shut up time, and so I'll throw it to you first. Because I'm a coward and I want to hear your selection first. So we put it up or shut up time. Who do you actually think is going to come home with the green jacket this year?
Sure. So I think my top three right now, I think Jordan Spieth is in my top three. I don't think he wins. I think he's in the top three. And then I also can see a name like Justin Thomas being in the top three, but I'm going to go with Abraham Answer. I think if he plays well, I think he wins this golf tournament. And the only thing that can really get him in trouble is if he has a big number on a hole. But if his game is what his game has been at past Masters tournaments or, just overall in the past couple of years, he will win this golf tournament.
That's a great pick. I don't encourage. Obviously, we're not trying to encourage people betting, but that would be a good
Right.
bet. To go to Vegas for
Yeah,
that one because he's got
for
some
sure.
pretty decent odds right now. Yeah, so it's interesting. I was really trying to think over the top three. Maybe who do I see on the leaderboard? I actually do think Finau might be pretty high up there. I
Yeah.
don't think he wins, but I could see him having a pretty high finish. I do really like, you mentioned it before, I do really like Colin Morikawa a lot. I think he's a really good young player, and I think he's going to rack up a lot of majors by the time his career's over.
Oh, 100%.
I'm going to go with Rahm. I think John Rahm, he played pretty well last
pick.
week at the Dell match play. The Spaniards always do. He and Sergio always play well in match play tournaments. But Rahm is a guy, he's a good putter, but he's great off the tee as well. He's just a complete player, and he's just a guy who has been kind of on the cusp of superstardom and not quite gotten there yet. But I just really like his game a lot. The other thing is there are some guys who get rattled at the big moments, and there are some guys you can tell who get fidgety. He just seems like he's made of the right stuff, through the Ryder Cups that he's been through and some of the other big tournaments. He just doesn't seem to get too frazzled by the big moment. And so I actually think maybe he's the guy who would get the green jacket this year. But it's interesting. We're both going with international players.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes a point of pride for Americans, that way they try to hold on to the green jacket. But yeah, I think the international field is just so strong these days.
Yeah, and it's great for the game of golf too. We're seeing these players that are coming from all over to play. And one thing about John Rahm that I will say, or a couple things actually, you talked about fire, right? And someone who has fire and plays with a certain type of edge. John Rahm's got that. He's a fiery guy on the golf course. He doesn't let those big holes get to him, but when he makes a birdie, he's fist pumping. He's getting pumped about it. He's really excited. And another thing with John Rahm is, we talked about it before, hasn't won a major yet. Won a lot of tournaments, has not won a major. Is this the time maybe he breaks out and we see, like Sergio, him grab his first major? Obviously, we have a week to decide and see, but I think that's a great pick with John Rahm as well. I have him probably in my top 5, top 10.
Yeah. So final kind of question here. We talked a little bit about the field. Moving forward, like I said, Masters is the first of many of the 4 majors. Back in the day, there was the talk of, can Tiger Woods win the Grand Slam? Is there anyone, in terms of winning all 4 majors in one calendar year, is there anyone that you see who could win this? And, we made our picks. But, if somebody like DJ were to win, or somebody like Justin Thomas were to win, is there a player right now playing? Or perhaps is the game of golf in such a place where you could ever see a guy winning all 4 majors in a calendar year?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I'm in my life, I've had the pleasure of going to the U.S. Open, the PGA Championship. I've never been to the British, but I know the U.S. Open, the PGA Championship play very similar. Obviously, Augusta's its own animal. And then I guess the British is the big question this year, because the British was canceled last year due to COVID. We'll have to see how they do that tournament, if they do that tournament overseas this year, and what that's like. Now, going off your point, is there anyone that's really playing well enough to get that? You can argue Justin Thomas is playing well. He's playing really good golf. He's probably been playing some of the best golf we've seen the past couple of years, him and DJ. But the problem in my eyes, I see with the single season Grand Slam, is there's too many guys in the field. When Tiger was playing and coming up, there weren't enough guys in the field to beat him. Yep. And that was flat out it. He was just far better than everyone else. He was stronger. He was faster with his swing. He was just there more than other people. Because you could have a guy like Justin Thomas go win the green jacket, and then boom, you come later to the PGA Championship, Rory wins it again and comes out of nowhere. That's how good golf is, though. It's so unpredictable, so anyone can win at any time. Would you agree?
Absolutely. No, I just think the field is so deep now that I can't see there's not that one dominant player. There are a lot of really good players. There are a lot of great players, in fact, but that's the problem is there are a lot of them. I mean, it's
Right.
not, you go back to
Yeah.
the days of Jack and Arnie, and those guys, and they had Tom Watsons, and there were, and Chichi Rodriguez and Lee Trevino. I mean, there were so many great golfers back in the day too, that just the idea of one guy sweeping through all four. And you have to have such a different game. It was kind of like tennis, with the clay surfaces versus the artificial, hard top versus the grass of Wimbledon. You just so many different types of courses. The links style is so much different than the U.S. Open, which is different from the PGA, which is different from the Masters. So you have to have a different type of game. So I don't think we'll have anything. I don't think we'll have a Grand Slam champion this year, but. One of the things, Joey, I enjoyed doing this. I don't know about you.
Oh, had a blast.
Yeah, this was
Absolutely.
great. And so hopefully maybe we can do this again before the U.S. Open. We can preview the U.S. Open field and maybe see what we got right, what we got wrong from the Masters, and amend our mistakes
Absolutely.
and do that sort of thing.
Yeah. And one of the cool things, I think the PGA Championship might be before the U.S. Open this year. So we may have that to kind of look over first. And I think come the U.S. Open time, though, when the U.S. Open actually does happen, golf's going to be very interesting because we're going to see, I feel like, so many different winners that it's going to be anyone's ball game of who's playing the best at that point. So I'm looking forward to next week. I know you are too. It's going to be a great tournament.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for us. But I hope this was a podcast unlike any other for a tournament unlike any other. So until next time, I'm Matthew DeSantis, and you're also joined by Joey DePinto, and this is Amalfi at the Masters.